Welcome to the fastest stop in town. Today on the Masechtas Gittin Daf Ayin. We're going to begin on Ayin Amud Alf, about 7 lines from the top. Omer Rav Idi Bar Oven. Haiman de Boila Ziboira. If you have a person that literally swallowed a hornet, which doesn't sound like a great idea, Michya Loichaya, so regarding life, he's not going to live. Adahachi Vahachi, in the meanwhile, he should drink a certain measure of vinegar. And not just regular vinegar, but it should be shamzag. Rashi says, chaymitz chazak, exceedingly strong vinegar. Maybe he'll live a little bit, enough to be able to declare to his family of the different financial decisions of what he should do with the properties that he has before he dies. So, if a person eats this meat together with turnips, a person sleeps by the moonlight when it's a full moon on the 14th or 15th in the Tammuz month of Tammuz. So achzato achilu. So he's going to end up being held by an illness. Tana v'hamamali kreisa mikol davar, a person who fills up his stomach. Achzato achilu, also a person is going to be attacked with this illness. Omar papafilu mitamre, even if he fills up his stomach with dates. So pshit, what's the difference? Tamri masbon, that there's great qualities about dates. They satiate you, umishachanon, and they warm you up. Shalshaltan, and it helps you relieve yourself. Ma'ashron, and it gives you strength. Mafankon, it doesn't make you mafunik. A little kamashmon. You maybe would think that this would be good. So my achilu, what exactly is this illness we're talking about? So Rabbi Lezer, eshel atzamos, a fire in the bones. So my eshel atzamos. So Rabbi esh garmi, again something in the bones. So my asuse. So what is the remedy of all this? So Rabbi Amarli, my mother told me, Kuhu shakyane tlasa v'shiva utriasar, that you should, for all of them, you should take 3 portions and 7 and triasar and 12 v'hai adimiske, until you become healthy. So you should consume these particular measurements, as Rashi kol mashkin sh'adam shayso rafua yeshen minyan Yomim l'shtoisen, Yeshem Gimel, Yeshem Zayin, Yeshem Yud Beis, Kuhu Shakyani Aliba Rekna, and all of them you should drink it with like an empty heart. V'hai basa de achol, after you eat, v'shasi and drink, the alabei sekisi, go to the bathroom, v'nafik and leave. V'mashi yade, wash your hands. Umaisele buna de then you should take a handful of shishisa de Tal Pche, Rashi says, Mole Egroif, a handful, a fistful, Min Shasisa, Shem Maichel, a type of food, Hasim Kemach, Hadashim Melch, which is made of various flour, lentils, and salt. So that's the Shisa de Tal Pchi. Ubona de Chamra Tika, you should also take some, like a fistful of old wine. Vinig Belinhu Bahadi Hadadi, you should mix it in all together. V'nechol, and eat it. V'nichroich bisdine v'nigne, and you should wrap it all up and then sleep. Leika denokme ad dekoy menavshe, and no one should wake you up until basically you get up yourself. V'chikoi, when you get up, lishkale lisdine mine, you should take away that which you wrapped up. V'ilo hadarui, if you don't do that, then you may end up getting the sickness again. Okay, it's interesting that the Gemara, it brings down over here the Gemara Brachas Lamed Beis Amud Aleph on the Masur Sashas, because Moshe Rabbeinu also actually had this exact same illness. Amulei Eliyahu Rav Nosson. So he gave the following advice, and the Rambam usually gets the credit for this, but this is a Beferish Gemara. Achol shlish, shasa shlish, then hanach shlish. When it comes to your stomach, you should fill it up only a third with food, a third with drink, and then 1/3 of your stomach should be empty. You shouldn't fill up your stomach entirely. Why? Because when you get angry, Tamod al muluacha. Says Rashi, V'yamoli bitnacha kas, your stomach is filled with anger, Talmoid al muluacha. Aval im tamoli meacha chil shtia, if your stomach is filled with shtikais tiboka, then literally your stomach will burst. So if a person is full, so therefore they're not going to be able to withstand the pressure of anger. And it's usually, you can understand, a person who can't control their anger, there may be a link to someone who can't control their eating habits. So a person who's out of control with their eating, there's a greater chance they're going to be out of control about other things as well. So therefore that is perhaps the significance of that. But again, a person should not eat completely. A person doesn't want to get sick with a choyle mayim, with a stomach, and on this is actually question 1. Write 2 of the 3. So what are the 3 things you should do to avoid stomach issues? You should be accustomed to dipping things in the summer and in the winter. Rashi says with vinegar, or you dip bread into wine. Sudaska shahanoscha mimena mashach yadcha himena. The meals that you get hana from, you should draw your hand from it. Says Rashi, shlo tomalias kreischa, and you shouldn't fill up your stomach. So this is another thing. So you should have certain dips, which the idea also of dipping is it's a slower process. You're not just shoving food in your mouth. So you're eating a little bit slower, more consciously. And also, when you're eating, you're not eating to full capacity. If you do, then your stomach is very, very full, and you'll end up getting stomachache. And also, when you need to use the bathroom, go to the bathroom. Don't withhold that. Tilya, a person who drinks, Rashi says, yayin ra, bad wine, chivra ochazato. So he's going to end up having this illness. V'yitake. Rashi says, chaloshos, and they'll be weak. There's actually 6 different categories of wine. Mali the cool, the best one is sumka rechasana. Says Rashi, kasheshel reach toiv ma'oin, it has a great fragrance. Geria the cool, who the worst is tilya chivra, which is what we just mentioned, this very poor quality wine, which can obviously cause you illness. Amar Yehuda Haiman the Yosef Basaf Rane Nisan Gabi Nura, a person who is sitting, Rashi says, Labkarim, in the morning of Nisan by the fire, V'shayif Mishcha, and he anoints himself with oils, V'nafik V'yosef B'shimsha, he goes out and sits in the sun, Ochazatav Yitain V'yitek. Apparently that was not a good thing. Tarabanan. Hikiz dam, a person who let blood, V'shimesh Mitasai, and someone who is Meshamish Mitaso, and he had relations, having Lobanim Viktkin, he's going to end up having weak children. Hikiz Ushneim, if both of them were Mekiz dam, V'shimshu, and then afterwards they had Tashmish, have Lobanim Bali Rosin, you're going to have very weak children. Amra Papa, lo amran el doloi time midi. It's only if you didn't eat anything in the middle of a time midi. If you had something, later was not a problem. Amra Rabba Barhuna, Balmin Haderech, a person who is coming from the road, Vishimesh Vitaso, someone who has Tashmish, Havim Labanim Vitkin. Again, so when you come on the road, you shouldn't immediately have Tashmish. Tanaban. Habam Mesakise, a person who comes from the bathroom, Al Yishamish Vitasai. You shouldn't have Tashmish. Until you at least had the amount of time to walk half a mil. Then you should shade basically simulavi imoy, because the shade of the bathroom accompanies you. If you did have a lobanim nichbin, we're going to have children who have epilepsy. Rashi says noifun me'oisachayli, they fall down. Tanabam hamishamish mitasai mu'uman, someone who has tashmish standing, or chazato avis. So you're going to be grabbing hold of this illness of a cramp. Mayushav, if you're sitting, ochazato delaria, then you'll end up having this other illness of sorts. Fine. If let's say she's on the top, then ochazato delaria. So my delaria, what is this? Some Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, some delaria. It's some type of a medicine. Dardara. So my dardara, what is that? Rabbi Morika de Choiche. It's referring to to saffron by the thorns. Papa Olis away. So he went and swallowed. Rashi says loyas b'shinav. He chewed it up with his teeth and swallowed it. Papi Olis was shad away. He would first chew it up and swallow. Rabbi Mishinu Baki b'derech eretz. Someone who's not an expert in derech eretz. Rashi shinu koyach l'shamish. Doesn't have the ability, the strength to have tashmish. So Lacey Gimel Kavize Kurtime, he should take 3, Rashi says, Kvizas Kli Maxa Gimel Revios, a Kli which could hold 3 Revios, measures of saffron, the Chaychi, V'nidoikinhu, and grind it up, V'nishlikinu, and cook it, B'chamra V'nishti, with wine and drink it. Rav Yochanan, Hein, Hakziruni Wanurasi. This is exactly what caused me to come back to my youth, to be able to have tashmish again. There are 3 things that is machish, which weaken a person, which is TB8. So what are these 3 things that weaken a person? TB8. So here they are. So the Elohim, pachad, fear, derech, the road, and lastly, v'oven, and sin. Now what is this? Pachad, person is a lot of fear and anxiety and thinking of the future. Dechsev libi secharchar azvani koichi. So it's my koyach has gone away because secharchar mukav da'aga. I'm constantly worried. So someone who always has anxiety and is always worried, so it weakens you. You don't have the ability, it paralyzes you to be able to move forward. Derech, traveling, d'chsev ina b'derech koichi. I was afflicted by my strength on the road. And then avoin, by sinning, d'chsev kashal ba'avoini koichi. That I stumbled in sin, and therefore my strength was affected. Shlosh devarim matizin gufa shel adam. There are 3 things that shatter the body of a person. If you eat standing, you drink standing, having tashmish standing. There are 5 things that are closer to death and life. Let me read it again. This is on Shabbos too. You eat and then immediately stand up quickly. Shasa v'omad. You drink and then immediately stand up. You move. Hikas dav omad. You let out blood, then you stand up. Yoshan v'omad. You're sleeping. You just jump out of bed. Shimish mitasa v'omad. Okay. Shisha ha'isa miyad mace. There's 6 things. If you do it, you're going to die right away. Elohim haba b'derech. A person who's tashmish on the road. V'nisyageya, and is tired. Hikas dam v'nichnas l'beis hamerchatz. You just let out blood, then you go to the bathhouse. V'shasa v'nishtaker. You're drinking, you're drunk. V'yoshan al gabi karka, sleeping on the ground. V'shimish mitasai, and having tashmish. Rabbi Yochanan v'hu shiasan kisidron. It has to be done in the order that was prescribed. Rabbi kisidron mace. If it's done in the exact way, they'll die immediately. Shaloka sidrin cholosh. If not, then they'll be sick, but they won't die. Any va muras avdale avda. There was this particular woman that she did this. Tchlosaminayu, she did 3 of them. Umes. So we see she died. Now who kochoshavi? She happened to be a little bit weaker, and therefore it affected her more. But for everyone else, it has to be done in this particular order. And if it's not done in this order, you won't die, but it will certainly weaken you. So Shmeina Reuben Kashim Yutin Yafa. There's 8 things. I think this is a question here somewhere. Yeah, this is going to be TA7. These are hard questions because they're just buried in the middle of the daf. On TA, the last time there was a question was on Samach Vav. 4 blot. They didn't ask a single question, which is pretty unbelievable. So here's TA7. What are the Shmona TA7. Did I get it right? I actually got it right too. Shmoina Devar, Shmoina, three things that Reuben Kasha, a lot of it's bad, Umiyutin Yafa, but a little is good for you. Velhin, Derech, which again, traveling, V'derech Eretz, which can't just mean having good Derech Eretz, right? Rashi says, Derech is Lahalach B'drachim. Derech Eretz is Tashmish, as we refer to Tashmish. Oyisher, wealth, so Rashi, Miyuti Yafa, V'ruba Ikasha. If you're too rich, you'll end up you're going to be too preoccupied with your wealth. You won't be able to learn. You're not going to do anything else. You're going to be very haughty. Mulacha, work. Yayin, too much wine isn't good. A little is okay. V'shena, sleeping. Chamin, warm water, says lirchotz lishtais, regarding bathing and drinking. V'akazaz dam, and bloodletting. Okay. Shmoina Mamatines Hazera. There's 8 things that will cause you to not be able to have children as well. Ve'elhin Hamelach, salt. V'arav, famine. V'hanesek, Rashi is a saras. B'chi, crying. V'shein, asleep. Al gabi kar, because someone sleeps on the ground. The good ganiyos and coriander. V'kishos and hops. Shlo bizman, which are not in its proper time. V'kazas dam. Lamata kiflayim, and also someone who gives blood lamata kiflayim, double the amount. Okay. Says Rashi, hima metis kiflayim bekulan. That actually will be like double the amount, rather. Not that you double amount of blood, but doubling that giving out blood will make you doubly will greatly affect your ability to have children. Tana. Kashem shekash lamata keflayim, kach yafla mal keflayim. So the opposite works as well. Amar Papa, as the Gemara continues on Ayin Amud Beis, lamata min beitzim. When it says below, it means below the beitzim. Says Rashi kimo baraglav. It depends where on your body. That's what it's referring to. So if it's above or below, so if it's above or below basically your waist. So if it's below means your beitzim, lamal min beitzim. So if you can draw blood, it could matter if it's by your leg or by your thigh, as opposed to, let's say, in your shoulders, your neck. Rashi says, uva kil boises, or your hips. Vikisha shilbizmana. So we said another thing which can cause problems is hops not in the proper time. Tana kishem shikasha shilbizmana kaf yafa bizmana. It's good in its time. Amar Papa zmana Tammuz. Its time for the hops is the month of Tammuz, season of Tammuz. Shilbizmana teves. Yomi Nisan v'mei Tishrei l'malvu kashu. However, the months of Nisan and Tishrei, during those months, like fall and springtime, it's not bad, it's not good. Now let's go back to, remember we're learning Masechtas Gittin, right? Kisvu gel ishti. So a person says, I'm going to write a get for my wife, and he was healthy. And then afterwards, v'achzu kurtis yakus, and he ended up having, unfortunately, this issue which attacked his mind, which made him not think clearly. And then he changed his mind, don't write it. What he says afterwards is meaning because he was already overtaken with kurtis yakus. So Amar Rav Shimon ben Lakish, kaisvin v'noisen get l'alter. The truth is, no. You're going to write it, and we're going to give the get immediately, which seems to be unlike what we said in our Mishnah. Rabbi Yochanan Amar ein kaisvin. We're not going to write this get, ella likashish tape. Only after this person actually is healthy. It says Rashi. So what does Reish Lakish says? You write it and give it immediately. Vo amrin shaitahu v'niyachal garish. We don't say that the guy's a shaita. Okay, fine, he was attacked with this illness, but he's not a shaita, so therefore he can still divorce. Rabbi Yochanan says, no, that's it. So my time to Reish Lakish, why I say it's okay? The Tani ein b'davar v'achronim klum. He just says his later words are nothing, which means that the reality is that his words do have some validity, and therefore it's not that he's just like a shaita. Rabbi Yochanan Melach ein b'davar v'achronim klum. It means that his words are nothing. His last words are nothing. Delachi mitzil, that when he has a clear mind, lo tzarech u'meheda muchibe, he's not going to need to change his mind. Well, oyom in kaisan ela kashis rabba. You can only write it once he's healed. Rish Lakish is just like a guy. Someone was overtaken with Kurdish Yokas, it's just like he's sleeping. He says, no, you're like a shaita, and a shaita doesn't have das, and therefore you can't give him a get. So Rabbi Yochanan Nami with Yashin, why should you compare this guy to someone who's sleeping? No, because Yashin Maisa. So when it comes to someone who's sleeping, so you can give the get. He's not Mechusar Maisa. However, when it comes to someone who is overtaken with Kurdish Yokas, you need a Maisa, you need some medicine, some remedy to be able to heal him. So it's not the same. So he's Mechusar Maisa. Very shockish. Nam in the dam will shaita. Once you compare to a shaita, that's not good. So shaita will sami biyadam. Hi, sami biyadam. Shaita, there's no medicine in our hands. By this guy, there's medicine in our hands. Bisra sumka gmur v'chamra marka. We know what we're supposed to do. We give him certain fat, certain coals and wine, and by doing that, he'll be healed. So we have the medicine, we have the prescription in our hands. All we have to do is swallow the pills. So it's not comparable to a shaita. Shaita, there's no cure. Umiyom Rav Yochanan Hachi, does Rav Yochanan really say this, that it's not a get, and you can't give a get based on the situation. But Vayayim Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel, Shachat Boy Shnayim Orayv Shnayim. Nebuch, you have a person who has the veshet and the kana, the trachea, and he has the food pipe, his esophagus, that were both slaughtered. Someone cut his throat. The guy's dying. Or even if it's Roiv Shnayim. Baromas, but he made a hint, divorced my wife, we say that we can give the get based on the situation. Even though he's really dying. But Tanyan, we also learned, Ra'u mi guyid. If you see someone who's cut up, solo, someone who's hanging, al hatzliva, like on the gallows, so even though he's not all there, so to speak, it's still a get. So why don't we say the same thing about this guy is Kodesh Yokas? So Hakiyash, isn't that the same? Hasam over there died the siluta. This person has a clear mind. This person has a healthy mind. It's only ukachishusa who diaschil. It's just because of his weakness is the issue at hand. He's physically weak. His body is being destroyed and he's dying. But there's nothing wrong with his mind. He's of sound mind. So therefore, if he makes a decree and he's still physically alive, we're going to listen to it. But shigishta this person, Rashi says, is das mabulbul. His mind is all messed up. So therefore, we can't rely on anything he says. Even though, again, you would think maybe they're the same. They're not. Shmuel really say this din? Shmuel, let's say again, you shechted this person dying, and then he somehow runs away. So din is me'idin alav. You can testify, says Rashi, shemes lahasias ishto. Since you saw that his throat was all cut up, so you know he's going to die. So even though you didn't actually see him drop dead, you see him running, and you actually didn't see 30 seconds later him falling to his death, that's still enough to be able to testify that his wife could get married. Now, if he's taka alive, what's his testimony? And he's alive now. And if it says he's alive now, he could still give a commandment to divorce his wife. However, he's definitely going to die in the future. There should also be a din of golus, someone who shechs a person b'shaygeg. Why would this person not go to golus? It's for sure this person killed, and he killed b'shaygeg. Because it has to be you're the one that killed him to have to be chayav to go to golus. But now that you cut open his throat, it may not just be the bleeding, it could be the air that is entering in, which is going to cause him to die faster. So it's not necessarily you're cutting, but it could be an external factor. And therefore that's why you're not going to be chayav golus, but he's definitely going to die. Inami hu kerev es misasai. or he somehow brought in closer his death, says Rashi, al yedei shepirches, that he's like flopping around, nimsa shlo hargo zeh, so you didn't kill him, avol mikol makom soif lomos, he's going to die. Obviously, you are not going to be like off the hook completely for this, but it's not considered to be like you killed him to be chayav to go to Golos, because he didn't just die naturally. He instead was flipping and moving and maybe touching his throat, and it was opening up more. So he brought death upon himself a few seconds before than you. So by binayu, what's the difference? In binayu, the shachte bebeis the sheisha upirches. Let's say he's in a marble house, which means there's no wind, but he was flapping around. So he was Mikar Misa, but there was no Ruach that could have caused him to die faster. Inami, Deshachti Bibara Volo Pirches. You shechted him outside where there's air, but nonetheless he didn't end up shaking around. So he wasn't Mikar of his own Misa in that situation. Question 2. Shachat boy shnayim or rov shnayim. Be'ilu fanim plig migmar igoyla umas stad mezeh. So he said that it depends if you're again in a marble house and he's flapping around, moving around, or he was outside where there's wind, but he wasn't moving around. And therefore, the machlokus is, what is the reason he doesn't go to Golos? Is it because of Ruach Bilbo Lasai, or because he was Makar Misasai Alei Pirchus? So that would be the nafkamina between those two. And this looks identical to TB9. Shachat boy shnayim rav shnayim im goyla madua. So it says Einu goyla dechayshinin shema bilbul haruach or shema pirchas v'kirbas misasai. So it doesn't get into all the nitty gritty over there of the my binayhu, but you still have to know that both answers those TB9. Interesting. There's a question that's out of order. Let's do it now. It says I don't know why it was done this way. TA8. Dama de asima puma. Blood that comes from the mouth. Ha'im isle takanta. Is there a takana? So he said it depends if it's coming from the lungs or if it's coming from the liver. Right? So it says, Itzarech. So you do a test, and you can tell if it's coming from the lungs, there's a takana. However, if not, it can be coming from the liver, and then there is no takana. That was question TA8. Totally out of order. Good to see that. That's what it says. This is on Sabbath Testament. If it sticks to the straw, Mareka comes along the Isay Takanta. There's a way to get to heal. The Ilo, if it doesn't stick, then Mikab the Kasi V'Leisay Takanta that comes from the liver, and there's no Takanta. Okay, I don't know why that was done, but that is, sometimes these things happen. Okay, let's see one more piece. Let's get to the next element. So Nishtatek, let's say a person was mute. And you say, do you want us to write a get for your wife? And they nod, yes, no, so it has to be a few times. I v'leichash dilma shichya delav shichya delav lav nakte inami shichya dehein hein nakte. Right? Maybe he has an illness that has him shake his head like Nebuch, like Parkinson's disease or something like that. So he doesn't have control over his head. So how do you know the fact that he's moving his head in these different directions, that it means anything? It's possible that, again, he's just moving his head in different directions. Not that he's answering yes or no that way. So how could we be samech on that? So Rabbi Yosef bar Yomi Omer Rab Nachman diamrin le b'sirugin. We ask him in sirugin. What does that mean? So mamtinan bein har kana l'shila shav v'chayze v'shalom l'oisa shila atzma. So basically, you ask a question, and then you ask a yes question, a no question, etc. But maybe that's precisely how he shakes his head. He shakes his head up and then he shakes it down. So if it's a pattern, so maybe that's the pattern of his body. So again, how do you know that he's answering these questions? We don't ask just 3 yes questions or 3 no questions or yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. But we do 2 yes and a no, 2 no's and a yes. So this way, it's not based on any pattern. So once he shakes his head, we'll know the answer that he's correct. We ask him summer month questions in the rainy season. Different types of questions about growth. We ask rainy day questions in the summer. So what do we ask him? Regarding coats and linen blankets. Won't be afraid. Maybe he just got cold, even though it's the summer. So you say in the summer, hey, do you want this thick blanket? Do you want a fur coat? So if he shakes his head yes or no, that should help us. But maybe it doesn't, because maybe he's just freezing cold. It could be cold even in the summer sometimes. Right? Dilma karachade. Maybe he got coldness, right? So inamichama achte. Maybe he got hot in the winter, right? So you can ask in the winter, oh gee, do you want an ice cream? Whatever it is. So maybe he would do such a thing. So that doesn't seem to be valid to show anything. As we continue, Ayin Aleph Amud Aleph, Elwa Beperi. We ask him about seasonal fruit. Says Rashi, that don't come around during that time, and that's how we do it. And therefore, it's like, does this grow in this season? Does this grow in that season? The bananas grow in the winter, the apples grow in the summer, right? You can ask these types of questions, and we know, it's known, at least people who are engaged in agriculture, when these things took place. And therefore, by doing that, we would know precisely what he's taught, that what he is saying. He can't speak, but by his motions going up and down, yes or no, whether or not, in fact, he wants a get to be given to his wife. Ad kan.